Hello everyone, good evening. Very warm welcome to Pixel Priest and our fourth session on testimony. I don't know about you, but I've really been enjoying just hearing these testimonies over the last few weeks and how God's worked so amazingly in people's lives. It's just a real blessing to hear, isn't it? And so hello to those of you who joined us already. Hi to Kate and Trevor and Shirley. Glad you managed to get it on your laptop. That's great. And to Jacqueline and Trish. So lovely to see you all. And anyone else who's joining us. Yeah, so it's nice to see Shirley coming on YouTube too. So, and anybody else who's joining us, as I always say, you don't have to announce yourself, so it's fine to lurk, that's fine. But we do like to see who's here if you fancy announcing yourself. And also the idea of this isn't just for people just to listen, but also to engage. So if you have comments or questions as Anna and I are chatting, then please do put them up, because it's great to have your engagement and your experience to bring into this as well, because it just helps us to it helps it to speak to more people, I think, as more people engage with it. So please do put comments in as you feel prompted. Please, can you remember to like and share, just to help us to get known a little better. That always helps. If you wanted to make a donation, the details of how to do that are in the description at the beginning as well. I think that's everything. So just excuse me one moment, I just need to switch something off. Apologies for that, but my phone was on, folks, so I didn't want that going off while we're in the middle of Anna's wonderful testimony. So let's all just say hi to Anna, who's come in tonight to speak to us.
Hi there. It's great to be here.
Good, really warm welcome. So Anna works for Urban Saints at the moment, which maybe she can explain a little bit more about that later. But so we're just going to sort of have a chat and talk through with Anna this evening. So Anna, just we'll start at the beginning. So tell us a little bit about your sort of early life and faith journey.
Grew up in a village, so it's beautiful. Felt very safe, I just loved my childhood. And to me, everything was perfect. I didn't realise, I don't know, maybe you were much more well versed in the world, but I didn't realise that things really could go wrong. You hear the odd bit, but not really for myself. And started going to confirmation classes when I was 12 or 13. Sorry, I should have said growing up in Germany. I don't know if by my accent you could tell. I just assume people know. So started going to confirmation classes, which were a tradition. Actually, at the end of them, you get a whole lot of money. So there's a really good reason why.
So did you? So you say these conferences. So did you actually brought up a Christian? Was this part of your upbringing or not?
No, not really. So my parents are somewhere on a journey. But we went to church sometimes, but not even regularly for Christmas or other things. So it was it's a tradition that you did rather than anything else. If that makes sense.
Sure, right, I see. Yeah. So the confirmation classes are sort of what everybody did then, really, rather than it being something to do with your sort of faith developing.
So it was more like in primary school, then you go off to high school and you would have your confirmation classes when you're high school age. So it was a primary school reunion for confirmation classes, if you like.
I see. Okay.
Which is good fun.
So you get money. Sorry, you're coming back to that. You actually get money for doing confirmation classes.
So it's really bizarre. It might also just be my particular village, but so you go through 2 years of classes, and your parents over the years of your growing up will have sent envelopes of money to other people's confirmation, and then it's your turn to cash in your parents' generosity, I guess. But it was enough to pay for my driving license, which is similar prices to the UK, so quite worth going and enduring 2 years. But actually those 2 years for me have been transformational in a lot of other ways, which have been great.
Great. So when you went through the confirmation classes, did you find that it sort of did it speak to you? Did it help? Did you start to develop a faith at that point?
So I think I might have had an awareness of God, but going to confirmation classes, we just had youth workers who loved Jesus, and you could tell that there was something different about them. I'm not sure I would have been able to say it like that, but they made classes really fun. They talked about God in a way that was somehow very attractive, and I was like, oh, and there's something really different about them. So I was like, I wonder what this is all about. And so you get a lot of knowledge, but also just a lot of experience from these youth workers, and then older young people who were investing in us, which was amazing. Yeah, and it was during a time when my parents actually separated, so it's the first time where I was like, oh, hang on, world isn't as perfect as I imagine it would be. It's not all going well. And even if my parents were to get back together, somehow that's first realization of there's things happening in this world that are outside of my control. And what do you do with that? And what do you do with the pain that all of a sudden I experienced? I was like, so
how old were you at this point, Anna?
Probably around 13, 14.
Sure.
Quite protected childhood.
It's a difficult age though anyway, isn't it? And then when things happen, as you say, that are a shock to you, isn't it, really?
Probably a bit of security taken, but like my parents loved me, and that wasn't in question. It's more the what I thought was going to be the trajectory of living with my parents and then moving out became different. Christmases became different, so it all just changed.
Huge life change, isn't it? And sort of how do you process that and and sort of come to terms with that, I suppose, isn't it, really?
Exactly.
So this was happening at the same time and then as the confirmation classes, so that was,
which was, you might say coincidence or, God
God
appointments.
incidences, I believe in God incidences, yes.
Which then, I guess the questions in my head that we probably will wrestle with at one point or another is like, God, if you are real, if you're the God who my youth workers say you are, if you're a healer God, if you can transform all things, if you can make all things new, if that's who you are, if you're the God of love, then I want to know you and I want to commit my life to you. And if you're not real, if I submit everything to you, I should be able to figure that out in the next couple of weeks or months.
Sounds like a good way of thinking about it. No, absolutely.
That was my logic. I'm like, either you're real.
Very logical.
I'll see that. Or you're not real. And then
you'll know.
Exactly.
No, that's really good. Yeah.
So I guess I just threw myself then into... I guess youth ministry. I feel like my first question was, how can I serve? Not sure why.
Yeah. So did you? Sorry to stop you, Anna. But you when you asked that question, so how did God respond?
Oh, sorry.
Did you get a response?
Yes. Me, David. I was invited to a girls' meeting, and in that meeting, it all seems a bit random, but I think sometimes that's how God speaks. Got this invitation card, which was the hand of Jesus. And in that meeting, they were talking about, God is reaching out his hand. Sometimes we just have to take it. Yeah. He's not going to force his help on us, but it's our decision to take it.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, I'm going to take your help, God. I'm going to try life with you, whatever that looks like. And God has been responding. And, healing is slow. It's not an instant. Well, for some people it's instantaneous, but for me it's been over time and just having different experiences. So it's been amazing how God has taken me on a journey, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. So through this from 13, 14, so God worked and then did you feel a call then? Because towards youth work, is that what you were saying? That actually that's how it sort of progressed, if you like.
Yeah, though I probably wouldn't have been able to say that until later in life. I just wanted to serve God, whatever that meant. I'm not sure I fully know. I'm like, God, let me just dedicate some time to you, especially in Germany. You do gap years. I was like, that's a great opportunity to do a gap year, serve God, and then figure out what I was doing. And it was during the gap year that I was like, oh, this is what I want to do, that someone said, oh, have you thought about studying youth work?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't understand what you mean. Is that a degree? And so I wasn't even aware. And it was a girl from England, actually, who taught me that youth work is a degree that you can study in the UK.
Yeah. Because sometimes it does take somebody to almost point you to your calling. I do think God works like that through people. I know that's worked for me as well, where someone's actually said, oh, why don't you? Was how I've ended up here. People kept saying, what have you thought of being a vicar? I thought, no. But actually, when someone actually suggests it to you, then sometimes that is God speaking to other people, isn't it? To say, well, this is what you should be doing. Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't have been... I think you can study social work in Germany, but not really youth work. So it didn't seem like an option to me that was a thing you could do, just work with young people and invest in them and just see their potential, give them opportunities that I might not have had otherwise.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So then you went to study for your...
I did a gap year first.
Yeah, you did your gap year first, yeah. So where was your gap year? I need to get this. Because Anna has moved around, just speaking to you all now, Anna, in her short life, compared to mine anyway, has moved around such a lot and done so many different things. It's trying to keep track of what happened when. So where was your gap year?
Yeah, sorry. So I lived on a ship, so worked with Operation...
this was the ship, right,
yeah,
okay.
Worked with Operation Mobilisation for half a year. At age 19. So in Germany you finish high school slightly later, so finished at 19 and then moved to a ship, and then half a year later, so still 19, 20, moved to Montenegro to continue my gap year there.
Right. So what was the ship and what did you do on it?
Yeah, so it was I guess a ship that's trying to bring knowledge, help and hope. So how can we bring books or knowledge to people so that they can help educate themselves? In contexts where it's really hard to get access to education or books in general, but then also how can we help with certain projects? Like if they needed a water tank or a house built or a school built, someone would go out in advance to figure out what projects can we do to help. And then there's the hope. How can we share the good news of Jesus with people who come to the ship?
Okay. So where did the ship go? What sort of countries were you visiting then?
Well, it sounds a bit like a cruise liner now. So I went to the Caribbean.
Oh, yes.
Very nice. It wasn't a cruise liner. So there's the Caribbean and then South America. So we went to Guyana and we're supposed to go to Suriname, but I think that got cancelled.
And so what was your role then? What was your part in all this?
So my role was cleaning, so less glamorous, or at least that's what I thought. I was like, oh wow, so you raise a lot of money to be on the ship and then you go clean.
But it was your gap year cleaning.
But it was, I'm so grateful that was my job, because I think I was there to serve God, and I thought serving God is like sharing the good news in word, like telling people about Jesus. And actually, God was asking me, how can you serve me in everyday things like cleaning toilets or scrubbing walls that look clean, or disinfecting handrails? And that was really challenging, because I'm like, no one's going to see if I did my work or not.
no, but God will see. Yes,
infections might spread quicker, but no one will see. But it's like, how can you serve God in the small things and the everyday things, and how can you serve God without being grumpy about that you think your job is worse than someone else's? And
yet it was, as you say, it's so essential, isn't it? Because to everyone else there who was doing the the upfront stuff, I suppose, the going out and doing things, that they needed to have a clean ship and
exactly
to be healthy.
Sometimes we want to skip the foundations to get to something more advanced, but God's like, no, wait, let's get the foundations right, because otherwise the ship can't run. What if everyone else gets sick? Or cooking was a role that you could have had from the beginning. What if no one cooked for us? Because everyone's like, I don't do cooking. I think God just worked on my pride a little bit. Like, I'm too good for that. It's like,
So was it? So was, how many people were you working with, if you like, at that? Was it?
So I think there were 300. Well, this is like a German thing. I think there were 394 people on the ship.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Which sounds very specific. I'm not sure why I think that.
Yeah.
But it was about 37 nationalities. So also the first time. So I grew up in a small village in Germany, one church, whereas on the ship, all of a sudden you had people from all sorts of denominations with all sorts of theologies, all working together to share the good hope.
That's wonderful, isn't it? It's a wonderful picture, actually, of so many different people.
Wonderful and challenging. And you're like, what?
Yes, I'm sure. So it must have been a huge learning curve in so many ways as well, to suddenly be with, you say, such a cosmopolitan place with different nationalities and ideas and things. Wow.
But again, great to be challenged, like what God, what does your Bible say? Like, what does your word say? Why do we interpret this differently? And just helps you dig deeper.
Yes.
Rather
yeah, sure.
than being like, oh, someone taught me, therefore this is true. It's like, no, God, what does your word say?
No, so that would have really sort of broadened your
how
differently people can see faith and scripture and things. Yeah, great. Wow, real learning curve. So how long were you there for with this training?
Yeah, on the ship for half a year, and then I moved to Montenegro because they had a second ship, the Doulos, which was a year older than the Titanic.
Oh,
so it just wasn't worth
really?
restoring.
Yeah, no,
a little bit old.
Yeah.
But a lot of people wanted to go on the ship, and so they were like, if someone feels called somewhere else, speak to us. And I had met the leaders from Montenegro somewhere else, and I was like, it sounds amazing. It sounds like a lot of people need to hear about you. You know, it's not a place where a lot of people want to go. Why don't I go there? And someone else can go to the ship.
Okay.
But I didn't think that was possible. So I felt that nudge early on, but I'm like, oh, well, it's not possible. Therefore, let's just shelve it. And then that came
and
back
it happened.
up.
So God had heard that sort of prayer then. Yeah, that's great. So what was happening in Montenegro then? What is it you were joining there?
Yeah, so it was a church plant. So trying to figure out, okay, how do you share God with a culture that's so different from you? So I had to learn the language.
Right.
How do you speak Serbian? How do you go to a market and buy things? But then also how do you not just assume that the way you do something means the same to someone else. So that was good, but I think I needed the lessons from the ship first. How do you serve God in every day? But then we also tried to do some projects with families, or we worked with Roma children, just trying to teach them how to read and write, because they wouldn't access schools.
Right.
There's a stigma around them, so they were sent to help for kids with learning disabilities, though they didn't have learning disabilities, they just had prejudice.
Right. Okay.
So again, how do you bridge prejudices and help people who believe what's been said over them, that you're not good enough, you can never read and write, and then they were so proud, like they tattoo their names on their arms, and probably not the way in which we thought they would express it, but they're so talented and so gifted in so many ways. And so, it's just learning the different communities. Okay, what does sharing our faith look like here? Not just in word, but also in action.
Yeah, sure. So were you mainly working with children and young people in that, or was it everybody?
Everybody. Also families. We had an English cafe, so people could come and learn English. That was mainly adults. So just a variety of things. How can you serve in a community where there isn't a Protestant church? I guess that was the question. And how do you start a church plant when church for them looks very different? And so that's years of meeting together, trying to figure that out, trying to serve the community. And I think it's grown massively over the last years, but I think the beginning are always harder, or feel harder.
So you're at the beginning sort of trying to sort of create community and engage with people just to get started, really. Yes.
But I was just a short part of it. There were leaders there, for a long duration, and their goal was always, how can we don't want to lead this church, we want to start a church where local leads from the beginning. So how can you start something without a leader until a leader is ready, and that's when we're ready to leave. So it's getting around to that. So even lessons there, and how do you take initiative and work rather than being told, at school people tell you, do ABC, do this, and all of a sudden you're an adult and you're like, no one's telling you what to do.
No, that's right.
How can I come up with my own things that I should be doing? And I think I still lacked some of those skills and had to learn through gracious leaders. Okay, why don't you use your initiative to do something? I'm like, I guess I could.
Okay, so that sounds like a great learning curve, really, and working with so many different people as well, and in a different country. And so can you actually speak Serbian?
Yeah,
wow.
a little bit.
Wow.
Not fluent.
But okay.
I can get by.
And is that a country, is it a basically Christian country or not then? You saying there's no Protestant church there?
Not in the town we lived in. There were two Protestant churches further away from what I know. I think it's Orthodox Catholic and Muslim. So I'm not sure what the percentages are.
Right.
And, Catholic is still Christian, Orthodox is still Christian, just expressed differently.
Yeah, okay.
So I guess it's just trying you know, and there were people who lived with God and had an active faith, and I guess that's more what it was about, trying to teach people that God is alive today. It's not just a tradition, it's not just a religion, but you know.
Yeah. So did you find that really helped your faith to be working so closely, trying to develop other people's faith, if you like, or help them to understand faith?
Yeah, I think it challenged me on my presumptions of, you know, what I sometimes think, oh, this is Christianity, whereas no, that's just my culture. You know, so just making that difference of sometimes we're expecting things of people, but they're cultural rather than biblical. And I was like, oh yeah, that is a difference.
Right.
You know.
So great stuff. So Shirley says yes, it's great learning to find your own initiative. Smiley face. Yes, Shirley does a lot of that. It is, but that's the main way to learn, isn't it? It's actually to try doing it yourself. So, we have Pastor Aguma Benson Zadok here today from Nairobi listening in as well. So that's great.
Amazing.
So that's fantastic. So you came to the end of this gap year then, and but you knew then you were going to go and study a theology degree, is that right?
Yeah.
So that was the next step.
Youth work and theology with, youth and community work with applied theology. I think that's
okay.
The whole
And where did you go to do that? What did you study?
Ended up studying in Scotland, believe it or not. I think my parents were hoping I was coming home, but
right, okay.
It turned out I had a new idea.
So what was it? Just, you don't know, what did God draw you to Scotland, or was it just what the course you liked? You know, it was just where you ended up.
So on this ship I'd met this flatmate who was from England who told me that youth work was a degree, and I don't know how or why, but then I reached out to different colleges, just asking some questions, and some questions were on the website, so you could say that's slightly mean. I just wanted to see how they respond. If you're a Christian college, I would expect you're kindly answering my questions, because I need someone with patience guiding me through this degree. And so the college in Scotland just, so it doesn't exist anymore, by the way. So it's come to the end of its life, I think, but they were really kind, answered all my questions, were so patient, so that's how I ended up deciding on it. So it's a bit by chance and by googling, also just you know, I guess that's how God sometimes works as well.
Sure.
Random
Okay, so you did this degree, so that was the next few years, and then how was that? Was that good for your faith, or was it just really sort of learning deeper into theology rather than developing faith? What do you think?
I think it was both. The first 2 years were just harder, you know. So my role was to start a youth ministry, and how do you start a youth ministry as a first year student? I wasn't fully aware of yet, you know, so a lot happened by trial and error, and it's like, God, why did you call me here? I don't know what I'm doing. You know, like what are expectations that I can meet, or what are expectations that I should challenge, but I'm not sure I had that wisdom as a young person, but just found this incredible community of people that I would still consider my friends, and you know, which is amazing. So even just a couple of months back, I think, whenever we were allowed to, we went back up to Scotland to see everyone. You know, so foundational in that aspect, but also probably because it was my first proper living abroad, this is where I'm going to stay and study. And so, you know, you sort of cling on to that more, but also really challenging. I have no idea what I'm doing. Where's my family? I lived alone in a flat, just like, how do you do this? You know, so
right. So so a lot of change, even from actually you going for your gap year, isn't it? A lot of change, a lot of meeting new people, and you know, so was that was that difficult at times to do so many things on your own, if you like?
So the hardest part, I would say, is to be stripped of your identity a little bit. Like whenever you go somewhere new, no one knows you, no one asks you to help with anything, because they don't know you're good at something, you know.
Just this person that they've never met before, And
so maybe that's a trait that God also worked on, where I like to be known, I like to help out, I like to do things, but that's really hard when you're not getting asked to help anywhere, because no one knows what you're doing.
And that so, and that strange feeling of being somewhere you don't know, and no one knows you, and you don't know people either, and you're far away from people you do know. That must be quite hard as well. But and so then you have to keep reaching out, and how do you build deep relationships in a shorter time, or who are the people you can go to when you're upset, you know. You still have your family at home, and you know, and your friends, and that's been amazing. Like,
to have them. But it's also you want some local people where you can just chill or hang out or just relax. So
sure.
You know,
But you obviously manage that and
well, sometimes better than others.
Yeah. Oh, great. So when you finished your degree, then, so what happened after that? When you'd finished your theology degree?
So I did 2 years with one church and then moved to a different church. And that church happened to work with a youth outreach organisation.
Right.
So indirectly worked with them, which has been amazing. And they just had...
So are you still in Glasgow?
Oh, I studied in Glasgow,
yes.
Moved from one place to Edinburgh.
Right, okay.
So now in Edinburgh.
Yes,
you know.
we're keeping up, yes. So this is were you actually employed as a youth worker then? Or
the 2 years were with as a student, you had to have a placement. So it's it's paid, but it was only 16 hours, so never full time.
Right.
And then work as an administrator, I had to fundraise my salary. And so it was part time. I think I worked part time. I can't fully remember. But yeah, so because I thought, you know, my boss was from the States and he's a great visionary and such a people encourager, and I'm like, oh, maybe I can get alongside him. And as a German structured organizer, you know, just learn from him, but also with him and maybe support in that way. And so that's what I did then after my degree. So still involved in youth work, but a bit more remote.
Right.
As an administrator then.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. So you enjoyed that. Yeah. So and so did you? In this time, were you sort of finding out where God was calling you to then? It sounds like you were doing a lot of different. You'd been called to lots of different things really over those few years, hadn't you? And now you said an administrator's role.
Yeah. I guess it's always when you're done studying, you're discerning, okay, God, what's next? And it was almost easier for me to say, this isn't it, this isn't it, this isn't it, rather than this is it.
Yes, yeah, sure. Yeah.
You know, so there were a couple of things where I'm like, that sounds amazing. I just know it's not right. And so did that. And then, I mean, I think I went on job seekers allowance for a week and they somehow got me a job, or I got a job myself, I don't know, as a Motorola customer support agent while I was fundraising. So that was in between, because then I decided, and I'm not sure how I decided on the administrator role. I probably spoke to the Scotland lead and, you know, that's what we ended up with.
Right, okay.
And I was like, yeah, that sounds like it is it. But then got this customer job. But it was full-time for the training, and by the time I finished the full-time training, I had raised enough funds to go part-time with you. So somehow, I'm not sure how they always happen, but it seems like God has arranged things just on time. Right. So by saying no, somehow he opens another door for something that's a yes.
Yes, okay, yeah.
Not that I imagine working as a customer agent, but it was really good just learning, you know, how do you deal with people's frustrations and customer service? Yeah. What if there's nothing you can offer a customer, even though you know they are right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
feel like, I mean, in all these things, it seems like God certainly makes it, God gives you skills for the next stage, you know, and sometimes you don't know why you've ended up doing something, or, you know, or going through that experience, isn't it? But often it's to prepare you for something else that's up ahead, isn't it?
Yeah. And that definitely is true. There are parts where you're like, oh, why did I learn Serbian? Like, why couldn't you give me a Serbian family along the way? You know, so much effort. But you're right, you don't know, and you don't know what other skills you've learned while learning a language, or, you know, being immersed in a culture that you might have picked up along the way. And I think even, you know, writing your CV, I find it quite hard to express the skills I've learned. I'm like, I'm sure I picked up something.
Yeah, you know? Well, yes, so the different experiences you've had, definitely. Yeah. So, okay, so what happened next? So you did the call centre work, and then you managed to fundraise for the
administrative role. So I did them partially both for a while, but then I guess I was paid part-time, but sometimes I would do full-time hours just because I loved that work. And so I ended up quitting the customer support service role because I wanted to go away for the summer to help with the camps. you know, and again, it's just seeing God's faithfulness in providing different roles and experiences. And camp was the youth groups would take young people to camp so that they could hear the gospel message throughout the week.
Right.
Through events done in excellence, through, you know, a dining table that was set for them, because they recognised that a lot of young people wouldn't sit around in a dining table.
No.
You know, through the verbal gospel proclamation from creation to, you know, Jesus died for you. And this is why he came. He loves you, you know. And so being involved even in the background, trying to make that happen is just incredible, because you see what it's for.
Sure.
And then having been involved in the being a youth leader and taking young people, you're like, and it makes such a big difference being able to come as the youth leader where you don't have to do the prep.
Yeah.
You show up with your young people and that's exhausting enough. But you know, you get to experience all together. Which is amazing.
Yeah, no, great. Sorry, just have a quick look at that. Yeah. So, Shirley again says, absolutely new skills develop unexpectedly. They do indeed. Preparing for it out. So then you were doing this job, your new job, for how long?
That's a great question.
Well, it doesn't have to be much.
Well, I think I did the Scotland role for about a year.
Yeah.
And then my boss left to work for a church in the US, and at the same time we got a new UK director, UK and Ireland director, and she needed an administrator and I needed a boss.
Right.
So I then became the UK and Ireland administrator.
Right, wow.
For a bit, which again was just unexpected but amazing. And then somehow by helping with the camps team, just started doing some camps administration, just helping with systems, spreadsheets, you know, whatever needs done so that ministry can happen smoothly.
So that's such a vital role, isn't it? So when you say camps, that's the children and adults mental health. That's something else.
Just youth camps.
Youth camps. Okay, sorry. So but I mean the admin is essential, as you say, isn't it, for everyone to be able to just come and do, isn't it? So you really enjoyed that, yeah. So what made you leave that then? You did leave that eventually, didn't you?
Yeah. So it was during another summer, another camp. I was like, this is great, but I just feel like I'm one step too removed from youth work.
Okay.
You know, I wonder if I should go back working a bit more directly with the young people, because I was working with a lot of volunteers or staff members, but not really with young people. So I was like, I wonder what that would look like. In the meantime, I also, because now I was working for the UK and Ireland, I moved to Belfast, and my flatmate.
So Belfast now. Yeah. Gone from Edinburgh.
To Belfast, where I lived 2 years. I can tell you that much.
Belfast, right? Okay.
So after 1 year of living there, bought a house, and during that time, I feel like God was saying, okay, you know, it's coming to an end. You should, you know.
So were you actually doing a face-to-face youth work? Is that what you went to do in Belfast?
No, that was still the administrator.
It was still the admin job, right? Okay, I'm trying to keep up, right? Okay, right. So it's the same job but different location, right? And that's where you bought your house,
Yeah, because I could do it from home most of it, and then I would travel. I think I figured out in one 18-month period, I'd travelled on average 3 times a month or something, or taken a flight.
Okay.
You know, so for me that was quite a lot, but that was the norm. I know we can't imagine right now travelling anywhere, but you know, going on a plane was quite normal. I knew when I would get checked, usually they would pull me out, but you know, it's like, again, me. So who knows why, but so lived in Belfast, did the admin role, and then went to the camp to SEP, and that's where I felt like God was like, okay, it's time to think about when to move on and what to do, and decided to quit for December, so gave quite a long notice, because I just felt like God was calling me to more direct youth ministry again. But
you didn't have a job at that point. You were just obeying a call to actually leave this job, which you'd had for a while, and obviously been really successful at, isn't it? So it's just, and so, but you felt God was calling you to something else, so you took the leap and resigned without another job. So did that feel like a leap of faith when you took it?
I guess it didn't. It just felt normal at the time. You know, when you finish studying, and even then, I didn't know how I was going to pay my rent. I said no to some job offers, which seems stupid. I'm like,
Yeah.
why do you not just take the job? I'm like,
Yeah.
no.
It's not the
Figure out
right
what
one.
to do. Let me
Yeah.
pick the job I have to fundraise for and where I don't know when I can start, you know. So I guess because of that experience, and because even when I moved to Scotland to study, like I had no idea how much money I was going to get
Yeah.
from my job.
Yes.
I had no idea. Like, I knew accommodation was provided, but no idea how I would fully pay for my degree.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, okay, we'll figure it out. And luckily, my parents were super supportive, being like, okay,
Yeah.
if that's what you want to do, we'll figure it out. And I guess in some ways, they've lived out faith for me. You
Yeah,
know, it's like,
yeah.
okay, God, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Good.
know.
So come on. So what happened when you took this leap of faith?
Yeah, so
yeah.
So just called a couple of people, what do you think I'm good at? Where do you think my skills lie? Just a bit of identity digging, you know, because it's all, like I said, it's hard for me to figure out what my skills are and name them myself.
Yes, yeah.
You know, and so I just got other people to speak into my life. And a friend of mine that I'd spoken to, she was like, look, Urban Saints are recruiting in Manchester.
Okay.
Don't you want to, you know, that sounds like what you just described to me. I'm like, okay, that's kind of the wrong city, but
yeah. So you weren't thinking of yet another move to Belfast to Manchester.
I thought God had put on my heart to buy a house. I didn't want a house before. I'm like, it's a lot of effort. You're tied to a place. I lived everywhere before, you know.
Yes.
But I felt like, okay, it's the right time, you know, and God made it possible. Even that seemed something in itself. I'm like, why not Belfast?
You yes, know? Yeah. So
but,
that is strange, but yes,
yeah,
okay.
But then you're like, okay, God, if this is you, you'll figure it out.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
I actually was back in Scotland for a wedding and had to drive from Edinburgh to Manchester for the second interview, which seemed crazy. So I rented a car, drove down 3 or 4 hours, and then drove back 3 or 4 hours to catch my flight back.
Right. Oh gosh.
I was
yes.
like,
yeah.
what?
But it was the right job for you. So what is that? Is that more the face-to-face work? Is that what your new job is about?
So it's so my role is to find volunteers, to train them, and then to release them to start youth groups. But part of the expectation is that you're involved in at least one youth group yourself.
Yeah, sure.
Which makes so much sense because youth culture changes, and you know it's so easy to tell people this is how you do it, but then people are like,
you've got to be in touch with people as well. Yes, yeah, I get that.
Can you actually do it, or can you just talk about it?
Yes, yeah,
okay.
So that sort of seems like what you were looking for how you felt you were being drawn to do some more face-to-face, as well as using all the skills that you've got already or built up already with admin and working with people. And,
it seems like a mixture of the two jobs I had, which was interesting. I'm like, interesting way of doing that, God. But yeah.
Oh, okay. So then so when did you come over to Manchester to start that? That was quite recent, wasn't it?
Yeah, in 2019, January 2019. So it quit for December, and my new job started in January. So and I can't really take credit for that. That's God, which is amazing. Yeah.
Okay. So what's happened since then in your life?
Yeah, so moved to Manchester. Well, I lived in Belfast for a little bit and did 2 months, I think, remote until I found a place. I imagined that would be a lot easier than it was in reality. And then I realised how God had moved me before and how he had opened all those doors versus the reality of finding a place for most people.
Yeah.
So it was, started my job and it's just trying to figure out community again. How do you make yourself known? How do you network in a city where your job now is getting to know different churches and people and things like that?
Yeah.
But again, God has just been so generous. There were volunteers who were like, we've been praying. We wanted to do youth work in this area. We just didn't know how.
Right.
You know, and so being able to connect people, but really it's God connected me to them through a friend.
Right,
you know, or I met someone through a lady where I looked at her flat. I'm like, it's not just a job, it's God's connections weirdly coming together. And so we started training in June, which then took a bit longer for different reasons. But just what does it look like to start a youth group here? And then started in January, just before the pandemic, to actually meet with young people. Which, you know.
Yeah, so it's been a bit difficult over the last year to meet up. Yes, yeah. Yes, yeah, sure. So, As Trish says, you've certainly had a very full life and done some amazing things. God bless you.
I know.
And she's only young, Trish. She's very young, isn't she? So, yes.
Yeah, people usually then ask, and how old are you?
Yeah, that's right.
It's like, sorry, let me just count.
Yeah.
I'm 31 in case you ask.
31. Yeah, how did she manage to fit all that in? So, but there's more, isn't Anna? Come on, you missed out something else important that happened in your life recently.
So, met my husband online, in case you're wondering. So they're Christian apps, which I was hesitant of. I'm like, ideally I would have met my husband in a supermarket or a bus station or a random place. Obviously a Christian, you know. But then was like, okay, God, am I excluding one way in which you might want to use just because I don't want it?
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
or are you going to use it? And so met my husband online, and we just started meeting up, and then I thought, okay, if he's the right guy, he'll fit into my community and I'll fit into his. So it's really important that he meets my people and I meet his people. And so luckily we met October 2019. Yeah, that's right. And then started meeting people, being intentional. Oh, there's a concert from someone in my church. Do you want to come to that? You know, so there are a couple of people. And then I managed to get to Scotland. So he got to meet important people. I'm like, so what did you think? You know, which has been amazing.
Yeah, great.
And then the pandemic, I think, fast-tracked everything a little bit. So I was meant to buy a new house in Manchester. My old house sold first lockdown day.
Right.
It was supposed to happen on Friday, and I think the lockdown day was on Tuesday. So it got moved forward, which I'm told doesn't really happen.
Right.
And the estate agent and the solicitor were both like, you know, this is a miracle. I'm like,
So got it work again. Yes. Yeah.
Which is incredible. It's like, how? Right. Not sure. But you forget about miracles quite quickly, which is interesting. So the pandemic is like, oh, everything is bad. I'm like, oh, but remember, I sold your house in lockdown days.
Yeah, wow. Oh, yeah, that's great. Yeah. Okay, so you sold that. So, hang on, Kate, before we carry on. Kate says, you're certainly a very inspirational young lady. I've worked in youth ministry and it can be very challenging but extremely rewarding. Yeah.
I guess for youth ministry, it's realising that we all come with a history, and sometimes, you know, I'm so grateful for my parents, because they were always like, if you want to do it, we'll help you figure it out.
Yes.
And I think that's what God sometimes does with us. God sees things in us that we don't see ourselves. And that's what we get to do in youth ministry. Hey, God sees this in you. Let's help you figure this out. We get to be an extended or spiritual family for young people that they might not have.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, because actually that's right. It is like earthly parents in that way, isn't it? It's, God is wanting to help us to fulfill whatever our potential is, isn't it? And
see more than we can see is like, oh, God, I can't do that. It's like, yes, you can.
Yes, you can if I say so. Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Oh, wow. So that's great. So have you bought another house now? And
yes. But on the Wirral.
On the Wirral, yes. So how did you end up on the Wirral?
So we're supposed to buy a house in Manchester, and then me and my now husband then had to sit down and decide, okay, where's this going? Yeah. Because I had reserved a house. I was going to buy it. That was the plan. But, you know, to give that up, where do you just give that up and move over to the Wirral, or do we decide where this is going? But then we're in agreement that this is serious and we want to pursue our relationship, and so agreed that I would move to the Wirral. Yeah.
Is that where your husband's based? Is that why it was the Wirral?
He lives here. He actually Pastor Zadok. Am I saying that right? I'm not sure.
Yes, that's right. Yes,
We'll be happy to know that my husband is from Nairobi in Kenya. But has lived in the UK most of his life. So studied here, and you know, which is interesting because we're both from different countries and have lived in the UK almost half our lives now. Yes. Well, almost. You know, so we are from a country, but not really anymore. But we are from the UK, but not really.
So you sort of have that commonality as well. And
it's like, again, the question is that your culture? Is that your personality? Is this just our miscommunication? You know, so it makes it a lot easier because you're like, it might be one of those.
So, no, that's great. So fantastic. So, you know, just hope God has got some wonderful things in store So yeah, that is just fantastic, Anna. As you can tell from the comments, it's just, yeah, you are inspirational. It's amazing. I'm worn out listening to you. You know, with the number of things you've done in your short life,
Yeah,
short compared to mine. But you know, I think that's just fantastic how God's worked as well and opened those doors for you, and you know the times that you trusted in Him and He's really answered you, because that's my experience, and I think in the other testimonies you can hear that as well, where you know there's times when we trust in Him is when He really does come to the fore, isn't it? And it's that's just great.
It's funny because not every day feels like this, is it? But it's remembering. I think that in one of the verses it speaks about remember those things, write them down and tell them to your children so you remember the goodness of God. I think there's power in that, writing down things that we are thankful for, because it's so easy to forget, isn't it? Where you're like, what am I doing? And I have a lot of those days.
So you forget the amazing things, you say, because we can get dragged down so easily, can't we, by the other things in life that always happen as well, you know. So and
there's a place for that, but also then it's like, in the bigger context, who is God, and is He still faithful? Yes, He is. Will He come through? Yes, He will. You know.
And I just think that's always what's in the Psalms, isn't it? When people, you know, having this terrible thing, but then the pattern is that people often remember God's wonderful works, and you recall what He's done for you, and it's just, then you just think, oh wow, yes, you're just reminded of what an amazing God He is, aren't you? So fantastic, that's great. So I think Alex wants to come in and say a few things, I'm sure. Hi, Alex.
Hello. Interesting. Just when you saying there, excuse me, just when you saying there, write things down. So what I've done with all these testimonies is I've made notes. You know, this is great. You know, trying to keep up with you, Anna, is nigh on impossible. Right? It's just impossible. I'm pitching things chronological. When did that happen? When did this? You know, you're everywhere. Just a couple of things. You mentioned about healing, and I think the sustaining of healing when your parents got divorced when you were about 13, 14, and we didn't really talk about your high school years, but I was trying to understand what it was that you were kind of healed from. I mean, I've come from a similar situation. My parents divorced when I was 10, and the impact on, you know, of course, so many people go through that. Very few people I probably consider have the sustainment of being part of a youth fellowship, if you will, that you were at the time in Germany, which must have been really supportive through that. But also, I also get the sense that as you've discussed things and different ventures you've been on, both of your parents have been supportive of your stuff. So this has all been really quite amicable with regards to your parents and their divorce. So first thing, was that what you were referring to with healing? You were talking to the impact of your parents' divorce, that how you were being healed through that process. Was that with regards to that?
Yeah, I think it was still painful, you know, when people break up and you wonder, is it my fault? You know, I think young people always think it's their fault that their parents break up. So it's probably a lot of lies that I told myself I needed healing from. It's lies that I thought I wasn't loved or I wasn't enough. So it's not that my parents said those things. It's just what I believed or wrote into the situation. You know, I'm not enough for my parents to stay together.
It's crazy. I remember when I lost my dad. Must have been about 7 years ago, and we were trying to figure stuff out. And it's interesting. We kind of grow up, don't we, with our parents on such a pedestal. We hold them so high up that we consider them to be just almost deity in some regard, you know. And then you find out that your parents are just human beings, just like you. So then you kind of think, hang on, this isn't right. That's not what I thought. I feel cheated. My parents must be better than that. And then often people go through this kind of resentment phase, and then they kind of eventually get to this point where they say, actually, I love my parents for what they are, and thank God for them. That sort of stuff. But yeah, no, I get that. So the other thing, I thought the comment about, right, and I love this, it's like, right, okay, God, you've got 1 month, all right, and that's it. And if you don't sort it out by then, I'm not interested. And I thought, it sounded more like you said, right, Anna, I'm giving you 1 month to commit yourself to God because I'm too busy, unless I make the decision, I'm going to do it now. So it seemed actually, you know, it seemed like you actually gave yourself the ultimatum in that month period. I've never heard anyone say, like, God, you've got a month.
It wasn't a month directly. It was more, I'm going to go all in. Then if you're not real, I figured it isn't going to take long to realise if God is real or not. But it's not that I said a month or 3 weeks, but more, God, if you're real, I should know. If you're not real, I should also know pretty quickly once I throw myself in.
That's quite good though, isn't it?
It's good logic, good logic. Yeah, like that.
The other thing was, phenomenal. I mean, just your background is so unique, and do you know what? I'm watching you, and I could see the Lord. I could see humility for one. I could see the Lord just giving you that aura. You're beaming, with smiling, you're laughing. It's amazing to see you. You look great off your faith. You really do, and I can hear that in your tone, and I'm sure the audience can as well. I can hear that in your tone, in your the way that you move and everything. It's fantastic to do that. I'm thinking actually when you did that first ship with the approximately 394 people. Approximately. You couldn't be more precise if you tried. That must have been a real culture shock, really, from someone coming from, if I kind of read it correctly, you came from this small German village with one church.
And
it does sound like your life has been very much been involved in the church. As if I asked myself the question about whether there's a naivety about that, because you haven't been exposed to some of the stuff that happens outside, and maybe you have, and I just haven't seen that. I see other kids that go through things like youth fellowships and stuff like that, and they seem to be unaware of what is going on in more of a broken world outside of what's going on there. And I'm wondering if you've had any experience through, certainly using with Urban Saints and the other stuff that you did before that, how you've kind of picked up on what's going on with regards to that.
So I guess part of it is my family still, there's a lot of stuff happening that I probably don't talk about so much.
Yeah, absolutely,
that all of us probably have. But then also being involved in youth work, you just see,
what feels like, don't you, through them?
What feels like everything. And I think that sometimes you have power to do something and sometimes you don't. And I think that's the hard part where you watch something. I remember someone saying, and this is probably an extreme example, if they were in Albania and there were children's prostitutes, and they were like, we can't save them now because of what's happening, but we can rent them for an hour and show them what it's like to be a child, watch Disney movies and buy them an ice cream. So they could do something for an hour, and it broke their heart that they couldn't fix it. And I think that's what youth work sometimes is like. You see God's potential in people, but sometimes you can't fix it. Well, it's not my job to fix it anyway. It's God's. But so the stuff that you see as you're working with young people, I guess, where, a young person who is the main carer of her family because her parents are drug addicts, or then having, the grandpa passes away.
I think that just goes to show my naivety, really, rather than yours. I've got this perception of perhaps this this fluffy sense of being in the UK and seeing, these kids that are coming from broken homes on council estates and things like that, which of course is a real thing as well. And you're talking about something that is just way beyond my even comprehension. So that just shows my own naivety.
But it's, I guess in that it's trying to see people for people. We are often, because of our circumstances, if we all had equal opportunities, wouldn't we all thrive in similar ways? I wonder if we would. And so, these young people haven't had the best of starts. How can I make their life a little bit easier? Or how can I help them get the opportunities that they deserve? And sometimes it's telling them, you got to fight for this. I know someone will hear your case. I can't do anything about it, but if you keep going back and fighting for it, there will be a way. And them succeeding and being like, you made it. It wasn't anything I could have done, but you did it. And
it's being there for them as well, isn't it? Really, is probably one of the biggest things, isn't it? To actually be there and to be showing love for them, support for them, isn't it? And this time, because but
it can't,
just so important.
I'm just a person. I don't have the capacity to do that for a lot of young people. If you think I can do that for more than 2 or 3, that'd be foolish to think, because I can't. I don't have that investment power. It's
an interesting point. I mean, I suppose, having gone through a spate of depression myself, one thing I always find quite interesting is when people use the term, come on, pull yourself together. And it gets slated, that comment, because it's kind of like, you can't say that, you can't say that. And yet I came to the conclusion that fundamentally there is only one person in this that can do this. Whatever your support mechanism may be, and of course all of us here would endorse that of a spiritual nature and that of God and Jesus. But whatever your support nature is, there is almost this fundamental that, you have to do something. You've got to take responsibility for your life. And I think that's an important point you've made there, because actually it's not about bailing people out. It's about encouraging people. It's about helping them, giving them, I suppose, some self-confidence to try and help them do what they need to do. And that sounds what you're saying. Is that about right?
Yeah, I guess in the end, if it's a decision for Jesus, I can't make for anyone. If it's a decision to get up and go to work, I can make that for anyone, even if I pick them up, drag them out of bed.
That's right. No, you can't. Yeah, absolutely.
I can't.
It has to come from them, doesn't it? Yeah.
So there's an encouragement that you can, but also sometimes there's a choice. Okay, me helping you is not helping. So where I'm like, I have to let you figure this out by yourself, because you have to take ownership. And that's really hard as well, It's recognizing your own capacity, it's recognizing, that other people need to want help. It's like the hand Jesus offered to me when I was a 13-year-old. It's my choice. Jesus isn't going to force me, And similarly, youth work,
but yours works on two levels, though, because one is it's actually supportive in a community kind of way. And of course there's the spiritual side as well. It's the same as us with the Wallasey Unleashed. We kind of have this community arm in which we want to be supportive of the community, and help, give people a voice, I guess. And there's also the spiritual side with Wallasey Unleashed Church and the Pixel Priest, where we want to try and help people get an inkling and sort of try and get some sort of encouragement to find out what is this God thing about. So just interesting as well, going back to the camps that you did, I'm guessing, you correct me obviously, is this because you're working with kids that are either already involved in faith in some sort of, maybe a small way, either seeking or are part of something in the first place? Or is this something where you've got kids that have got no idea of the concept of faith?
So it could be either, depending on the youth groups. So I guess they would come as youth groups. So they are involved in a group. That's the camps I used to be involved in. Urban Saints, they have different models. But so even in the youth group, you didn't have to have a faith in order to come to camp. But they did know there was some sort of talk about God and Jesus. But they didn't necessarily have to listen if they didn't want to. A lot of them probably just came because it was fun.
Why not?
Their friends were there.
It's free dinner. Get fed. But it's an interesting point, because I think this is one of the things that the church and many people trying to serve today probably have this problem about, look, how do I engage with people of no faith at the minute? I'm kind of aware of the social aspects of what has been going on in the last 5 years, what's happening in a culture way and all that sort of things in the West. It's an interesting dynamic. I'm guessing that you've seen, obviously, different cultures as well, if you've been doing stuff in the Balkans, and you've been doing other things like that. There's probably a very similar kind of pattern to all kids are all kids wherever they are. Fundamentally, they just want to be loved, really, ultimately. But the differences and things like that. What was the point I was going to make? I'm trying to think. That was it. It was like, how do we penetrate that? How do we do it? It's almost like the church itself or Christian leaders have to define or figure out a new method every couple of years, perhaps, of how do we penetrate this new audience of whatever. Is there anything you can give us advice on that for?
Well, we started a youth outreach group in Manchester where I lived, and so thanks to the volunteers, who've journeyed through that. But at the beginning, we had a venue, we had a set program, and that was before the pandemic. And we had young people engaging, but one or two, and then the pandemic hit. And so we prayed as leaders because the young people weren't engaging online, which is surprising because everyone thought that's where young people are. But I think a lot of youth groups actually found that online doesn't really work with young people. Who wants to be on Zoom and have to share their news to everyone? I'm not sure that's where you want to belong necessarily. Right. That's been a lot harder than we probably anticipated. And then we started just in April to do detached work in the park. So just go where young people are at. We know young people are in the park. So let's just be there. Let's be consistent. And they've seen us before, so they've seen us at random times. They know we've been around for long. And that actually has been really successful. How can we go where young people or people are at? Not just how can we invite them in.
Yeah.
And then how we're doing program looks very different. A lot of them struggle with mainstream school, so conversations don't happen in an orderly fashion necessarily. So, how can we have individual conversations and show Jesus and show them they are loved and that they belong in the in-between times, intentionally whenever they are there, rather than relying on a talk that we aren't, having, because we're just struggling to figure out what's been your high point this week, what's been your low point, and they don't even listen to each other. Like, that's not something that's working for them currently. So how can we engage with them in a way that is working for them? And what is working for them is the individual. Okay, how's your week been? Oh, it's been not so good. What's not been so good? Oh, that's happening in your life. That's really hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
When we formed, Simon's put a comment up as well, Elaine. When we formed Unleashed, I think one of the things that we realised is very much to what, if I may, Elaine, Simon's written, being where they are is such a good mission all statement.
Yes.
Is that we realise that the church is often, especially in the Anglican Church, very much is, this is where we are, this is our base, this is where you come to somehow interact with us. And I and the rest of us, we were talking about this, and actually we need to get out on the street and meet them. We have got the Wallasey Unleashed gazebo that we've never had the opportunity to use
that
because of the
soon,
pandemic.
won't we? Yeah,
so it'd be great to go out with that. Look, I'm going to hand back to Elaine. Honestly, Anna, it's wonderful to talk to you. I think I can only echo statements by Shirley, Kathleen and Trish. It's amazing watching you. You're just on fire for God, and it's so uplifting. I could talk to you for hours, but I'll hand back to Elaine. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Alex. So because I haven't read Shirley's comment, who says, "Amazing, Anna. May God continue to use and encourage you. You are inspirational." Lots of people use that word. So no, it's been great, Anna, to chat with you. Yeah, it's been really good. So thank you so much for coming in and agreeing to be brave in front of the camera, because it's not always easy, I think, sitting and showing your testimony when it's for anybody in the world to look at, really, isn't it, and listen to. So it's great to bear that witness to God. That's fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you.
Right. So we shall see you all next week. We'll be here again next Wednesday. Should have another great testimony for you.
Donations?
Yes, I've already mentioned donations, but Anna's reminded you about donations if anybody wanted to donate.
Sorry. Just in case, I think Elaine and Alex are amazing in the ministry they are doing. So if you can donate anything, to enable this ministry, please do.
Thank you. Yes, very much appreciated. Yes, so all go to reaching out to people where they are. It's what we're trying to do too. So okay, so thanks everyone, and we'll see you next time.